before I start, I like to give them a chance to talk about themselves. Talk about something they proud of so far, or some journey they experienced. Okay, Ria, you probably start. Yeah.
Hi. Oh, this is working. Okay, great. Hi, my name is Ria. I'm an 18-year-old quantum computing developer. I moved to Waterloo actually in September to start university, and I actually met Brian, I think it was last year at RBC right here, and I think it was one of his conferences actually. And so my work is mainly around quantum computing, so I'm mainly focused on quantum communication and quantum communication networks. I was actually interning at KPMG this summer with their cybersecurity team, and last summer, I was at the Eindhoven University of Technology looking into nanostructures and how that's being implemented in quantum communication networks as well. So that's a little background on me, and I'm looking forward to what the panel has looking forward.
All right. Yeah.
Hey everyone, what's up? I just want to start off by saying a huge thank you to Brian. He put a ton of work into this conference, and thank you so much for inviting the Knowledge Society to be out here. I want to give a huge round of applause to him.
Thank you.
My name is Talha. I'm 18 years old. Currently, I'm taking a gap year from university, working on a few side projects, and my goal is I just really want to start a company. So previously, I've done a few things. When I was 17, I joined a company called the Tech Society, which was an event startup as a second employee. And in under a year, I helped scale the company from 2 to 20 employees and to 15 cities around the world. And through that experience was when I really first got super ingrained into the tech ecosystem and really started to see problems around talent. I know people in Toronto especially talk about how small the talent pool is, but like learning to hire and fire at the company was my first like real experience seeing, damn, I had to put up job postings. I need to find people, and it's really hard to attract super smart people. Besides that, I've also gone super deep in technologies like blockchain and VR, and most recently, me and my friends have worked on a project called Hotspot. In short, Hotspots, we basically created a way to use internet over SMS, and the goal was there's actually 1.2 billion people in Africa who have cellular infrastructure to do text but not access to internet, and we basically created a way to allow them to do so.
Amazing.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Brian, again. Like, it's a pretty awesome opportunity to come here and talk to all of you guys. Even when I was like networking there, like some of you guys are working on really interesting things. So kudos to Brian. Woo! Hey guys, I'm Brianna. I'm 16 years old, and my kind of goal is just to work on creating solutions to really difficult problems by using disruptive technologies. So I started off when I was like 14 at this company called Xanadu, where I was building like quantum neural networks and working on their photonic quantum computing system. And then I got really interested into like reinforcement learning and natural language processing, so AI. And I was like, there's this idea called like artificial general intelligence, and a couple of like very few companies working on artificial general intelligence. If you don't know what this is, it's basically what every mainstream media news talks about, where they're like, oh my god, like AI is going to take over all our jobs and it's really scary. That's kind of AGI in a nutshell. Not really. So I moved to Vancouver to work for this company called Sanctuary AI, where I was working on their cognitive mind architecture, and we're basically building human intelligent robots. And right now I'm just in the Knowledge Society trying to build cool stuff to solve problems.
That's great.
Thank you, Brian, for the conference and the food. It's great being here. I'm Liam. I'm a 17-year-old machine learning developer. And for the past year, like what I realized is I don't want to wait for life to start. Like I just want to go and start doing things now. And so I've been diving super deep into machine learning, trying to learn as much as I can and build a lot of things. And this summer I worked with Layer 6, their TD Bank's AI research group. I got to work with a bunch of PhDs, all twice my age, and learn a ton from them. And while I was there, I built real-time face recognition algorithms and also e-commerce fraud detection systems. And right now what I'm working on is a project with sick kids to improve the lives of babies who are born preterm. So you can predict what their cognitive, motor, and language skills will be a couple of years down the line. So you can help parents prepare. So I'm just trying to figure out how can we use machine learning to impact others in a positive way. Yeah.
Wonderful. I'm a little bit humble while hearing their stories. I guess a lot of terms, for people may not be familiar, all the terms they are talking about. And when you read all those things on the news headlines, become the cutting edge, become like a cool, like all the buzzwords. But for those guys, they're already doing it, right? So I'd like to ask you guys, do you view those emerging technology, doesn't matter, is a quantum computing, reinforcement learning, or machine learning, are they difficult to you guys, or how do you learn that?
I think one of the things about just learning in general and access to knowledge nowadays is the problem isn't access to knowledge or access to information. Like, we have the internet, we have YouTube tutorials, we have free online courses, we have all these things. I think the main thing is like the time and like drive to learn these things on your own. Like, especially when you're in high school, like you show up to school, you come home, and then you're just tired and want to watch Netflix. And so the only thing lacking there is like the drive to go and do something. So I think that's one of the really big things. But then like just, okay, now you have this drive, like what do you actually have to do? I think a large part of it isn't trying to work from the bottom up. To like feel like, oh, I have to learn the math and the calculus and all the fundamental programming before I can start doing something interesting. I think it makes a lot more sense to go from the top down. Like, what is a problem I want to tackle? Like, maybe that's like rare disease detection, right? And so, okay, what are the things I need to learn to be able to solve that problem? And I think that's the right way to approach these things.
Wonderful.
Yeah, exactly. So to echo what Liam was saying, if there's anything you want to learn, no matter what topic it is, there's an online resource for you to do so. If you want to learn something at a high level, there's YouTube, there's Quora threads, there's Reddit. If you want to learn and go all the way deep, MIT edX has open source courseware where you can learn like deep fundamentals of like math and sciences. So like the only thing that's stopping people is just drive and just like the ambition to like really want to go outside, learn these impressive emerging technologies, and then take action on them.
Yeah, just to like share a quick story on that note, it all really comes down to mentality and mindset. So I remember when I was 14, just like when I was like a young kid, I was just really interested in physics in general. And I knew about quantum computing when I was like 12, but I always thought that it was like the type of thing that I'd be working on in my 30s, like after I get a PhD and I'm in school for like at least 2 decades. I thought that it was like a later thing that I would be able to work on. And then one of our mentors, Nadeem Nathu, I was talking about how excited I am about this technology, but the fact that I just don't have the math foundations and programming foundations to actually start building things. And he was like, Brianna, no, you're just overthinking. Like, literally just hop on your laptop and start working on this thing right now. And so I have like a lot of people coming up to me and asking me the same question, like, oh, how do you actually start getting into these uprising technologies? Well, you can literally open your phone and like start learning about quantum computing right there. It's a matter of whether you do that or not.
Yeah, I think something that Brianna reinforced really nicely that took me a while, I think a year into the Knowledge Society actually, to kind of figure out is you just have to do it. Like, there's so much, like, yes, you need the drive and the ambition, but I felt like there was also a lot of mental blockers along the way. Like, can I do it? Like Liam did emphasize, you don't need to know the calculus, you don't need to know the programming skills. But that was a huge doubt that I thought. As a perfectionist, that was hard for me to digest that. How can I not know the calculus and just go on with quantum computing, or go on with like not know programming but go on with web development? And I think this really reinforced when I started my first quantum computing project, where it's like the resources really are out there. It's just for you to be like, yes, I won't get it my first try, and yes, I will fail, and yes, things won't go out right, but at the end of the day, I'm doing it, I'm trying. And I think putting yourself out there is one of the most important things you can do, because if you don't, then you don't know what could have happened. It's like you miss all the shots that you didn't take. So
Wonderful. Have you heard that? One thing that you mentioned, when I was 14 years old, I just keep thinking, when I was 14 years old, what did I do? And at that time, I didn't have a computer. But you guys, nowadays, there's no excuse you cannot learn. And one thing I heard again is, you need to do it. Don't think too much. I hear many people ask, for example, as a cybersecurity, I'm not quantum computing or blockchain, just cybersecurity. Many people ask me, can I switch to that? Can I do that? Can I learn that? Do it, right? So like those guys, do it. And then you know how, is that good for you? Take some project. There's so many places you can learn. Okay, great. I think we learned a lot from there. So you guys are in Knowledge Society. Basically, you have one title for almost everybody, innovator, right? So innovator. So where do you find those innovative ideas? So what do you think about innovation?
Before we answer that question, I know we're mentioning the Knowledge Society a lot. I just want to check with the crowd, how many people actually know what the Knowledge Society is? Awesome. So I get to do the marketing pitch. All right. So here's the way we like to think about it. So if you want to be a world-class basketball player or a world-class soccer player, what do? Well, if you want to be a world-class basketball player, since you're a little kid, that's literally all you do. You go to school, but afterwards, you're literally trained basketball. You hit the weight room. You learn how to have a proper diet so you can get strong. Just be the best basketball player you do. You're constantly just thinking about layups, 3-pointers, and that's all you do. But here's the thing. We have all these things for athletics and for artists, but what do you do if you want to be a world-class Olympic CEO or someone who goes on to solve really tough billion-dollar or billion people problems? And that's why Naveed and Nadeem, they're the co-founders of Knowledge Society, and that's why they really started it. Knowledge Society is a human accelerator. It starts off with kids 13 to 17. It exposes them to emerging technologies and different problems in the world. And the goal is to one day for these kids to go on and hopefully be the next Elon Musk, solving these really tough problems. And that's the Knowledge Society.
Yeah, just to further expand on that, to allow you to really understand what the Knowledge Society is. So on your point about innovative ideas, what we do to kind of foster this skill of thinking big, thinking what we call 10x or 100x. We have these mini hackathons, and these hackathons are based off a problem. So maybe we're thinking about housing in India, in Pakistan, in some certain city. And we're kind of okay, so we have this problem. Let's try to understand this problem, break down why this problem actually exists. And then let's try to think and use all these uprising technologies to actually think of a solution. And at the end of this 5-hour hackathon which really just consists of brainstorming and ideating, then we make a presentation about our idea and how it's actually going to work. And so a lot of the hackathon is around fostering this type of think big mindset. And that's kind of how we go about this, except we do this repeatedly for 3 years.
Hackathon for 3 years.
I think one of the most interesting things was actually how it broke my expectations of what it was going to be. Coming into the Knowledge Society, I thought it was going to be, they're going to teach me about quantum computing and teach me about artificial intelligence. And so that was my mindset going on. I thought skills were the most important thing in the world, right? It turns out that's not how the program is structured at all. The way we see the most important things, it's network, mindset, and then skills. That is what matters. If you want to change the world, you can't do that on your own. You can't be working in your basement all alone on some weird ML project. You have to be working with other smart people. And so I think a really good example of that was in my first month in the Knowledge Society, I got a free ticket to TechTia, which is in this exact same venue, right? And so me and a couple other people were here. And before we went in, we had a team huddle. And one of the TKS staff said, okay, your mission tonight, Liam, talk to 5 people, right? This 3-hour event, talk to 5 people. And imagine me 1 year ago, this small, nerdy Asian boy, all I've done is math and programming before. And I'm thinking, I have to talk to adults that aren't my family? How the heck am I going to do that? And so in that entire 3-hour night, I don't think I talked to a single person. I was just terrified the whole time. But the thing about TCAS is it's okay, don't accept that. You have to get better at this. This is one of the most important skills, but school doesn't teach you this. So how can you develop those social and networking skills and develop the mindsets you need to go on to do great things? So that was one of the best things TCAS has done.
I think a plus point to that Liam highlighted was the network. So the people that you meet in the Knowledge Society, I think they're the most valuable because your network is your net worth. And in my time in the Knowledge Society, I just meet all these cool people. I remember I first met Talha before the Knowledge Society. And I just look back and think, wow, the amount of growth this guy has had in the past 2 years is insane. And looking at people like that, looking at people growing, going from just a kid in high school who I didn't know was working on all these cool projects to now I'm wow, hotspot, what's that? That's so cool. So looking at stuff like that, that's just so inspiring. And knowing that there's someone else doing something like that, that's pursuing their dreams and helping other people, I think that helps with back to the point of innovative ideas, because ideas come from bouncing off of each other, discussing them, talking about hard problems. Because I notice the conversations at the Knowledge Society, they're not on biggest social media trend, usually. It's more so on the hardest problem that there is out there, the hackathons, the stuff that's going on in the world, stuff that billion-dollar problems. And these are things that I don't think I've experienced anywhere else. And so at the end of the day, I really think it's a network that really cherishes these innovative ideas. And I also think it brings out more than just who you think you might be, more creativity.
Like when you spend your entire day at school, like everybody around you, what they're there to do is get good marks, right? They're not there to think of any interesting ideas. You're not taught to be creative, right? And so I think that's why like a lot of people going into university or into the workforce, like they don't have that creative or innovative mindset. And I think Rhea touched on that. Like everybody you're around is on a mission to try and do something great. And I think that's where the innovative ideas come from.
Yeah. I think Liam brought up a really good point. And based on like all the things we mentioned, I think we can sort of like distill like a framework we have for like what innovation actually is. Like when I look at my opinion on what innovation is, I basically consider it the creation of something new or the creation of something that's a breakthrough. But how do you actually get these things? And Liam mentioned, when you talk about innovation, I personally think that we're not actually seeing as much innovation as we can today. And that's because there's a lack of original thought. And when you look at why there's a lack of original thought, it's literally not taught anywhere in the world. Like we all go to the same schools. We're all exposed to like the same media, the same news. So no one's really learning anything new. But the thing that requires you to really like think what is innovation or think of a breakthrough idea is two things. You either need unique information or you need a unique insight. And I think that's really the first few steps is gathering like unique information about the world. Like what are upcoming exponential technologies? What are like unique trends that we can look at? Like data, the amount of data we be creating multiply, the amount of like processing speed increasing, and finally, how can we like use all of this that we learned to use like different mental models and frameworks to create a unique insight? And that's how I think you think of unique and innovative ideas, get unique information, make unique insights, and then use like the network and like all the friends you created to really bring something to fruition.
Amazing. I'm almost speechless. One thing you can observe from what they talk. So originally, when I first thought about this panel, we will meet smart, brilliant kids. At my age, I can say that. So I have a misconception of the things. So those smart kids, they're sitting in front of the computer, they are doing some self-learning. All of a sudden, they got something, right? So that's kind of, but just from what they talk about, they talk about networking, they talk about presentation, just the way they present. Everybody a great speaker, right? So for a lot of adults like us, we're afraid of the stage. But look at how they present. Not only they present this, like speak of the points like very perfectly, they also show their teamwork. They kind of like collaborate with each other just within this panel. I don't think they arranged that before, but naturally there's something happening, right? So great. My next question is, all right, so you're kind of in the tech industry, right? What do you see the industry, the technology as a general, for the next 1 to 5 years? What kind of trend? What kind of major things do you think will happen in the next 1 to 5 years?
The first thing that I think of is definitely automation. Like already today we see a lot of things being automated. Like, for example, there's like chatbots that we can talk to instead of talking to a human. Now it's going to be that, but on a completely different scale. So just to give you some context, when I was at Sanctuary AI, since we're literally building like human intelligent robots that look like us, think like us, talk like us, you can start to think about the application for what these robots will start to do in the next couple of years once they can think like us, talk like us, and also look like us while doing those things. And so that's literally replacing human jobs. But in the short term, it's just going to be a lot of automation using things like AI and machine learning. And how I kind of see this is that it's just like a natural evolution, like similar to how we've evolved from like unicellular organisms to multicellular organisms. Humans are just going to become more intelligent, and we're going to be building tools that are a lot more intelligent. And so why dedicate all your time towards doing like menial tasks that we don't need to allocate time towards? And so when I talk to people, there's this common opinion about, oh, we don't want AI to replace jobs. Like, we should not be investing lots of money into AI because it's just going to replace the human workforce. But instead of thinking about it in this way, like, let's say that you have a bulldozer outside and it's just digging holes into the ground. You wouldn't say, okay, actually, instead of having a bulldozer, I just want a bunch of humans taking spoons and digging the hole in the ground. You wouldn't actually do that because that doesn't make any sense. And so similarly, in the next like 1 to 5 years, we're going to see the same process of just like automating a lot of menial tasks that at the moment we just don't need to do anymore.
And so I guess the point I took away from that was like AI, like, yeah, it'll replace some things. It's not going to replace everything. Like, what it's doing is augmenting what we can do, like improving efficiency or making new things possible. And I think that's going to be true across like every industry, but not even just with AI, just like new technologies in general. Like, I don't think we need like as much like breakthrough, like cutting edge NLP chatbots. I think it's really just thinking like, okay, how do I apply these existing technologies in my current industry to solve problems? Like the real estate industry, for example, right? Like everything is done by hand or it's fragmented across like 50 different software applications. And so all these things, like people are still trying to catch up with digital transformation. I think that's the main thing that's going to be happening over the next 5 years. Like every industry trying to catch up and to stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I'm actually going to take sort of like the opposite point on that. So I don't really believe in making long-term predictions, anything longer than like 1 to 2 years. I think anything beyond like a year is sort of like speculation. Even a year is just crazy. But rather than like state what I think might happen, I'm just going to let the audience think of like a unique perspective. So everyone in the world today is talking about how fast technology is changing and how we're on an exponential curve and everything's moving so fast. But like, guess what? I actually don't think that's fully accurate. Like, I've done a really in-depth research about this throughout the last few months, and one surprising fact I found is we're actually sort of in stagnation. When you think of like industries like construction, in the 1930s, the San Francisco Bridge, a bridge that's over 2 kilometers long, took just 4 years to build. Recently, in the 2010, they did construction to repave the road, and repaving the road alone took 8 years. And you see this in like across like many different industries. When you look at like large scale construction of buildings, the Empire State Building in the 1940s, 1950s took under 8 years to build. Guess how long buildings that are just like a quarter size of that take to build? Like construction buildings in like North America, of just like under that size, take almost like double the amount. So I think either two things can happen. Right now, we sort of are in stagnation, and I don't know like the fully underlying factors why. Some people say is because there's a lot of like scientific research is broken. A lot of people say we're just not moving towards industries or automation fast enough compared to the numbers they're throwing out there. But what I really think is if we really want to achieve exponential growth and get to the point where humans are really talking about wanting to be, we need to start thinking like a lot smarter and really like putting our money where our mouth is. 'Cause I think there's a lot of like big companies or big organizations that talk about innovation, but innovation isn't really happening. So that's just like a unique perspective for you guys to think about.
I kind of never thought about it that way. I've always kind of thought about it in a more of a sociological perspective, I'd like to say. So if we're thinking about it in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, let's say. So we have our basic needs, and then we have our relationships, belonging, and eventually we get to self-actualization, or what gives us fulfillment. And I kind of think of technology or innovation in something that's always supposed to be there for us to solve extremely hard problems, improvement, like Liam and Brianna emphasized. But I also think if we're looking at this from a sociological perspective, essentially everything that we do, I think, should lead to self-actualization. But I think it also takes generations to do so. So if I'm looking at it from a personal standpoint, my grandparents lived in a time where they didn't have access to technology. Their day-to-day was probably in farms with crops. But if I'm looking at my day-to-day right now, I go to school, I'm working on these projects with quantum computing. And so I think it takes generations to reach self-actualization, and I also think technology is kind of assisting us to do so, because it takes all these mundane tasks, like Liam and Brianna emphasized, and makes it so much easier for us to do so. So when I'm thinking about it on the grand scheme, from the sociological perspective, I think the point of innovation ideally is for self-actualization, and biologically humans are geared for improvement. And I've actually never thought about it from Tal's point of view. So now I'm kind of doubting everything that I'm saying because I've never thought of it from that perspective. So I think that's also really interesting to think about.
Wow, I really appreciate the different perspectives. That's actually the innovation coming from. Okay, my last question before I ask you guys to ask question. We talk about technology, very cool, but away from cyber tech and risk, we need to talk about risk. So while you guys are in different cutting edge technologies, what do you think about the risk those technologies will bring to the society, the impact to our future?
I have two thoughts on this with regards to machine learning. So I think it opens like a new avenue of attack vectors. Like we see deepfakes and all these other things. But I think really that's just going to be a new arms race. So like we have traditional like software security. Recently we've had cloud security. All these things, it's like, okay, it's just a new area. But I think one of the more interesting things is the solutions that have been given by machine learning. For example, like fraud detection. Like much of that is automated right now. And I think one of the interesting things is we're not thinking about how to improve those systems. It's like I create a fraud detection system. I think it's good. And then we just say, oh, let's just run it and save our company however much money. I think one of the more interesting things we can do with machine learning is adversarially learning systems. So there's these things called generative adversarial networks. And the way they learn is there's like an artist neural network and a detective neural network. And basically, like one tries to generate art, one tries to tell the difference between real and fake. And over time, they improve each other. So that's interesting for art, but I think similar techniques can be applied to cybersecurity. So we have some fraud detection system, right? It's working. We think it's working well. We have labeled data. I think what would be an interesting approach to take is how can we like test these systems using machine learning agents to see where their weak points are and proactively find these like security vulnerabilities.
I actually wanted to take that from a quantum computing perspective because I feel like with everything that there's a good side to, there's also a bad side too. So if we think about there's this huge thing with quantum computers that they're going to essentially break current methods of cybersecurity infrastructure, which to a point is true. So there's this company based in Waterloo known as Evolution Q, which is working towards making quantum safe cryptographic algorithms to help companies make that quantum shift. And they kind of look at three main perspectives or main parameters when it comes to making that quantum safe cryptography tool. So the first being the shelf life. So the number of years that you need to store the data that the company needs to store in a cybersecurity system. The second being the migration time. So the number of years that you actually need to migrate all the data that the company has from their current infrastructure to a more quantum safe system. And the third being the threat timeline. So this is the number of years it will take before relevant threats will actually break the quantum vulnerable system. And the three main points that comes from this is that if you take the shelf life, the sum of the shelf life and the migration time, and that turns out to be less than the threat timeline, then you know that the company most likely isn't ready for any quantum attacks. It's more likely to be vulnerable to quantum attacks in the near future. And I think this is extremely huge because with this shift in quantum computing, we say that this poses as a threat to our current cybersecurity infrastructure. But if we also look at it from a different perspective, let's say quantum communication, it can also pose to be kind of like a savior to security because quantum communication we look at it as a safer means to communicate where it's kind of like an unhackable communication system. So I think it's interesting when you look at any piece of technology because there's a good side and it's a bad side. It's more so how you handle it. And I think the biggest thing is to be prepared for these. So it's being prepared in the next steps for every corporation or every company to think about, okay, so by 2030, if this is a problem that we'll face, we have to start looking at this now. So I think it's really good to appreciate companies like Evolution Q out there in Waterloo. There are many out there as well. But looking at their strategies and trying to adapt the regulations and protocols that they have and trying to implement them in our current methods, I think that's one of the most important things that it is to look at when we're looking at it from a cyber tech and risk perspective.
Yeah, just to add on Ria's point and kind of rephrase what she just said, I think there's really like three main things to note about this. The first thing is that like quantum computing does actually pose a huge risk to current encryption methods, specifically asymmetric encryption. So think about like RSA encryption HTTP, like all these things, we're going to have to fundamentally change the way that we're thinking about encrypting messages, because once we do have a quantum computer that can actually work, we'll be able to simulate all the possible keys, possibly in a matter of hours. And this ability to do this will be on the cloud. So I could access a quantum computer on my laptop at home and just break into somebody's email and read their messages. Like this is a
Microphone.
Yeah. Oh, this is this is something that will happen in the near future. But the second point to note is that we currently don't have quantum computers that can do this. And so it's going to take around a decade to get to this point. And just expanding on Ria's idea, like post-quantum cryptography is something that exists currently, but there really isn't a lot of money and thought going into post-quantum cryptography. Like there's only a couple of companies that are really thinking about making their encryption methods quantum proof. And so this is an area that people really need to start thinking about right now.
Yeah. So I think they all took it from the perspective of their domain technology. So I'll sort of put this in the perspective of blockchain. And when I think about like cybersecurity for blockchain, I sort of like think of like two components that I really think about and worry about a lot. So like the way blockchain work, it uses a PKI system, and a lot of the cryptography that is used is like SHA-256. So I think about how can we start using cybersecurity, but not just thinking of the lens of improving security, but how do you solve people solutions? If I'm a blockchain user and I want to hold some Ethereum or some Bitcoin, I'm going to hold my own public, my own private key for my public address. And if my private key gets leaked and someone finds it, then I'm screwed. Someone can go and steal my money. And in terms of like storing away or hiding this private key, it's not about necessarily improving cybersecurity technology. It's more about how do we actually encrypt this private key in ways that humans can store it, whether it's like putting it into our biometrics or another solution. That's like one thing I'm really looking towards, like to see how people solve it. And the second thing, when you think about technology and blockchain, when you think about like SHA-256 encryption, I'm actually not that scared of quantum computing. Like I think a lot of people in the quantum computing space really overestimate how practical and how powerful the technology really is. When I think of like quantum computing horizon and what's happening today, I think a lot of the stuff in quantum computing today is a lot of fake quantum. People saying we have achieved quantum supremacy, but it's just like quantum computing, but on classical software, so it doesn't really pose a security threat at all. I still think in terms of SHA-256 encryption, we're really far away from a practical quantum computing actually achieving enough qubits to actually crack encryption. So I think we're good there. I think we should really be focusing around these people-centric solutions of how we actually arrange and go around cybersecurity technology rather than improving cybersecurity infrastructure itself.
Amazing. Next year, we will have a quantum computing event. Definitely talk about that. But as you can see, any technology can be like two sides, for good usage or bad usage. And also the technology itself will bring the risk, right? So not only can help us, but also can destroy us. So that's the power of technology. All right, considering of the time, that's all the question we have right now. We can only get 2 or 3 questions from audience. So whoever wants first, go fast. All right, so I can see.
Hi, thank you so much for taking the time and speaking today. So I'm actually taking a course in uni on cryptography, and so I'm interested in your take in how quantum computing will change the nature of cryptography. How do you think that, let's assume that quantum computing was, up and running, how do you think the nature of cryptography would look like? Because it would change the way information technology and information flows dramatically.
Yeah, so just from a cryptographic point of view, like I think something really fascinating to look at is just really actually leveraging quantum mechanics and solutions like this to then create new ways of sending messages securely. So one thing that a lot of people are looking at right now is something called quantum key distribution. And it's basically where we can send messages that are encoded generally in like a photonic system. So you encode them in this photonic system, and then you could send them through satellites or through optical fibers. So in China, they actually had an experiment with a QKD system, a quantum key distribution system, where they were able to transmit like really very, very small messages through satellites across. And the purpose of doing this is that messages are theoretically unhackable. And so this is like another way to kind of approach cryptographic methods. It's by actually leveraging quantum and allowing us to create solutions for it.
as
Yeah,
well?
Ria can probably expand on.
I kind of wanted to look at it more from, let's say, quantum physics perspective, I guess. I think just with quantum computing, there are just fundamental laws in quantum physics where even if there was a hackable system, in terms of if we're looking at it from QKD, it's the hacker is detectable. So if we're looking at, let's say, a quantum teleportation network, if I were to send a message over to Brianna with my quantum teleportation network, if there were a hacker who were to intercept the message, they would first of all not be able to read it, and second of all, I would know, and the message, the delivery would be intercepted. This mainly goes by you can't copy any message, because if you did, then it would fundamentally break the basic laws of quantum physics, the no cloning theorem. So basically, when I'm looking at it from that, I think I'm not too aware of let's say any cryptographic algorithm that it might change, but I'm more so aware of how it would change the way we look at hackable systems and the way we deal with those.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for answering that.
Hi there, my name is Andrew. You were talking about post-quantum and Y2Q, stuff like that. So previously, when AES was being developed, they chose between Regindle, Twofish, etc. Do you know if any current standards which are post-quantum safe, which are part of the new certification process? I'm not sure if they're named at AES2, but I've had a hard time finding any of that.
I'm not too aware of any specific system, but I am aware of a few resources that you can look into. So the Global Risk Institute actually released a report, and I think it was written by Michael Moscow, the co-founders of Evolution Q, and they kind of go over the parameters that we look into in a post-quantum world and how that would break security standards. So I think the Global Risk Institute might give you a few research papers that you can look into for some resources. In terms of specific protocols, I'm not too sure of, sorry.
All right, one last question. Yeah, water.
Thanks. First of all, I've been in information security for over 40 years now. I have the white hair to prove it. And I feel very humbled and inspired by what you've said here today, so thank you very much. I'm just wondering if you could specifically talk about any of these quote-unquote billion-dollar problems that you're applying your minds to, and you can maybe just talk briefly about some particular examples that you've been working on.
I think one really interesting area. So we hear a lot in machine learning. We can now like detect cancer, or like these other like lung cancer, these other like super common diseases, like more accurately than doctors can. And so that's still being fleshed out, like how we're actually going to implement this. But one of the things I noticed is that all these diseases that are being detected are common diseases. That's because like the common paradigm is you need lots of data to be able to do prediction problems. So I thought this was strange, and I started working on a way to detect rare diseases and frame it more as an anomaly detection problem. And so I started work on this on my own and just currently only focused on lung diseases, looking for visual abnormalities so you can spot any rare disease. And then recently I've started working with sick kids on this to see if we can try and deploy it in a larger fashion. Not sure how the economics tie in, but I'm hoping it's $1 billion problem so I can retire.
All right, that's all the time we have. Thank you very much for the panel.